ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the final presentation before we adjourn for lunch. This is a panel discussion on how we can fund the future AI-driven opportunities across ASEAN. Now, as we know, AI is opening new frontiers for investments from early-stage innovation to large-scale infrastructure. And this next session brings together investors and policy leaders to explore funding strategies for inclusive, sustainable growth. Allow me to introduce our moderator for this session. Let's put our hands together for Vivek Lath from McKinsey. And we are also pleased to have with us our distinguished lineup of panelists. We have Khailee, partner at 500 Global, also happens to be my neighbor. Syed Haizam Jamalullail, Managing Director from the Hive Southeast Asia. We have Mahesh Uttamchandani from the World Bank and Pedro Uria-Recio from CIMB. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together and welcome our panelists on stage along with our moderator, Vivek Lath from McKinsey.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know this is the event which is just holding you for the lunch, so we'll try to make it much more exciting. A brief introduction, myself Vivek Lath. I'm partner based out of our Southeast Asia office. I lead our work on digital and analytics for entire Southeast Asia. Again, last few months, each and everyone, whether you talk about the corporates, whether you talk about the government, everyone is really talking about how AI is disrupting the world. So this is where, again, we are going to discuss what are the gaps in terms of funding and how, again, the paradigm is shifting. Before we start, let's just start with a round of introductions.
Hi, everyone. It's Khailee, Managing Partner and owner of 500 Global, Silicon Valley VC firm. But I'd love to introduce myself in a different way today. I'd like to kind of recall back and introduce myself as a 15-year-old. Sitting in front of the computer, figuring out how to hand code HTML, CSS, upload a file, and build my first website. The moment I shipped my first website online at age 15, I had sat in front of the computer for 19 hours in a row. My mom would put food in front of a table, asking me to come back to eat at the dinner table or go to sleep. I'm like, Mom, you don't understand. This is the internet. And, and today, I feel the same way again. Like here at 500 Global, myself and all of our partners, we've been spending weekends and nights just like vibe coding and building new things, like even organizing hackathons, build-a-thons, being part of other people's communities, building products within our firm on different teams, but also shipping products. We've been also investing a lot in AI. We've done one new AI investment every week for the past 2 years, of which like 2 of them have become unicorns. One of them just got acquired by Meta for more than $500 million. So we see the momentum of AI as something that's really lived. It's really lived within what I do and what a lot of you do, right? So I'm very happy to be part of this panel to talk on it on all fronts, right? So this is me and looking forward to chat with all of you.
That's interesting. It just reminded me my 15-year-old son is now using ChatGPT on a daily basis.
Oh man, we got to build something together, man. We got to co-found something, your son and I, yeah.
Yeah, I'm Haizam Jamalullail. I'm the managing partner of the Hive Global AI Fund and the Hive Southeast Asia. We're running a venture capital fund, early stage investments with the Malaysian government under Jelawang Capital. We've invested into 13 companies. The mandate was invest into companies that will drive Malaysia to the 4th Industrial Revolution. We just launching our Hive Global AI Fund. So the Hive is a partnership based out of Silicon Valley with the Hive in the US. They're into the 5th fund right now, has always been in the AI space. So we've also worked very closely with the Ministry of Digital and the National AI Office to create the Global AI Village, which is Khailee's also a partner of, where we have AI engineers and we built with our partnership with the National AI Office to create National AI Office Lab, which incubates companies using AI to solve digital problem statements for government. So our first project you can see behind is a company called Rakantani. So we've worked closely with the Ministry of Agriculture, private sector players like Bernas, university like UPM, to create a WhatsApp AI chatbot for the local farmer. Yeah.
Thank you. Pedro?
Hey, my name is Pedro. I am the Chief Data and AI Officer in CIMB. I have been living in Malaysia since 2014, intermittently, because I spent 3 years in Thailand since then, where I was Chief Analytics and AI Officer in a telecom company called True, and prior to that, also in Malaysia, in Axiata, right? So in CIMB, we are working very hard to become the most data and AI-enabled bank in Malaysia. We are working on a number of use cases. Some of them are customer-focused, some of them are employee-focused, some of them are about infrastructure that we have to put in place in order to deliver these use cases. And we are putting in place also a governance to make sure that the use cases are driven in a safe way that protects our customers.
Thank you, everyone. So let's just start, Khailee and Syed Haizam. Would love to understand your perspectives. What are the broad trends related to AI investment in Southeast Asia? We are hearing, again, lots of investments going on, but what are you seeing in terms of early stage companies and what it takes to scale up as well?
No, so as I mentioned, we're working closely with the Malaysian Government Ministry of Digital and National AI Office under National AI Office Lab, and they've given us various verticals to look at. So basically, what they feel are the key sectors and key verticals that the government needs to look at in terms of AI. So they've given us agriculture, they've given us healthcare, they've given us transport and logistics, government services, and SME. And education. So we saw an opportunity, so we're working very closely with them to build something that they need. So with regards to the macroeconomic factors in Malaysia, we saw food security as a big issue, the farmer security as a big issue. We latched onto agriculture. We worked closely with the Ministry of Agriculture, with UPM, and then we've focused, because private sector is very, very important to drive this. And we feel that anything that needs to be built needs to have a commercial angle to it. So we're working very, very closely with Bernas on this. So we've created Rakantani. And firm believer that Malaysia doesn't become an AI nation when people in this room, me and Khailee, use AI, and Pedro use AI. But Malaysia truly becomes an AI nation when the local farmer in Sabak Bernam uses AI. It's democratizing all the information that UPM has, that the Ministry of Agriculture has, that Mardi has, and it's commercially viable because it will also solve problems and that Bernas identifies and the data set that we can get from all the different farmers. I'm a firm believer that private sector needs to drive this. And working closely with what private sector needs and the government working closely to facilitate that and building what is needed and what will then become commercially viable as well.
I think the thing that what Haizam has just shared actually is a very new and important part of the AI narrative, because the previous waves of the internet, whether it's Web 1, Web 2, mobile, fintech, and so on and so forth, government involvement has not been as much as what we see now with AI. Government procurement alone actually drives so much of the GDP in any single country. Government employment in some countries, 1/3 of all people in some countries are actually employed by the government. So I think any way that AI, like the folks, like the things that you're doing that partners with AI is great. But what I'd like to also bring some attention towards is that the opportunity to build AI applications. Although 500 Global has invested in a lot of fundamental hardware as well, all the way to the LLM layer and the platforms. Early on, AMD had put up a slide there with Sakana AI. We've invested in their first round. They're one of our AI unicorns as well. But on the application layer is where we're seeing such velocity of opportunity, where we've kind of back a company, pre-seed an idea in Georgia, the country of Georgia, proceed to ship their product in 2 months, and in the same year, net $20 million of annual recurring revenue. And their staff members is 2 founders and 2 staff members. That's it, 4 people. So we're seeing opportunities like this just spring up across the world where we invest. Now, this opportunity for application, I'm going to contextualize it for everybody over here. 5.5 billion internet users right now. ChatGPT may be close to 1 billion monthly actives. If you talk about Gemini, you talk about Copilot being rolled out and forced onto Android or Microsoft Windows, maybe 2 to 3, max 3 billion internet users in the next 12 months will be AI users. How about the other 2.5 billion? Any one of you today can actually market and distribute to these 5.5 billion people and also spin up applications to serve them in a matter of days, weeks, months with vibe coding and everything else. Never in history that you have this chance to build something so quickly that has so much value you can spread to so many people. So on this application layer, we're definitely making a lot of investments there.
Yeah, I mean, just over the weekend, we had the AI Code Fest, right? That's part of the ASEAN AI Summit. So basically, the National AI Office had the healthcare track. They have the tracks across all the different verticals, healthcare track. They came up with a few problem statements. So over the weekend, we had a AI Code Fest where AI engineers and AI coders from all around Southeast Asia came to the ASEAN School of Business. They spent 2 days doing this. The winner will be announced tomorrow. Then you have a product that obviously the Ministry of Health has validated and said, look, this is a problem statement that we want you to solve with an application. We built it in 2 days, very fast, as Khailee mentioned. And then now, the venture capital funds like the Hive Global AI, 500 Global, and others around Southeast Asia will then fund it. But knowing that this is what the industry and the government needed.
No, thank you. Pedro, let me ask a question in a bit differently. The scale of innovation is very fast. Lots of startups are coming. Now, if you take a lens of a corporate, how are you really thinking of these disruptions and your willingness to work with the early stages company as well?
So I think from the perspective of corporate investment in AI, basically companies investing in AI applications, investing in AI systems for their own business, I think there is a long way to go. There is a lot of work to be done. When you look at the numbers of, for example, IT spend as a share of GDP in Malaysia in comparison to other Southeast Asian nations, you realize that Malaysia spends less in IT as a share of GDP than Thailand, for example. Of course, less than Singapore, but less than Thailand. I came from Thailand. I was working for a Thai company, as I said before, for 3 years before coming back to Malaysia. Banks in Thailand have been on the cloud for years. They started more or less at the end of COVID. They have already been experimenting quite a lot with artificial intelligence for a number of years. However, in Malaysia, we're just starting migrating to the cloud at this moment, right? I think there is a gap. There is a gap of a few years with Thailand, and we have to increase the level of corporate investment. First of all, on cloud. If you are not on cloud, it's very difficult that you're going to implement anything in AI. Of course, there are some industries that might be a little bit particular, and they may want to have deployments on premise. But for most of the companies, most SMEs, most industries, cloud is a must. And we have to make the investments in order to do that. Otherwise, we might be still trailing, going a little bit far behind other countries in Southeast Asia in terms of AI. And I think for that reason, conferences like this one, the work that the National AI Office is doing is important. I think the government just launched some cloud guidelines last week, and this is important to increase the cloud penetration and the level of investment that companies have in deploying these kind of systems.
No, helpful. Now, let's just take an example, right? When we compare ASEAN with other countries, let's say including Japan or US and Europe, we see the scale of innovation in ASEAN is still lagging behind. All the models, the leading unicorns, tech companies still developing and scaling up in other geographies. What's really holding ASEAN or Malaysia in these innovations? And what are the real steps required to accelerate the scale of innovations of AI in Southeast Asia?
Well, I have a different dimension to look at the idea of Asia and its involvement with AI. Because if you look at Silicon Valley right now, even before AI, 2/3 of the unicorns born from Silicon Valley has at least one immigrant, first-gen immigrant founder. A lot of them from Asia, a lot of them from India. Right? Okay. Now with AI, we're talking about, as of April data, it's $168 billion going to immigrant-founded AI companies versus only $6.8 billion going to US founders only. Okay? So Asia is leading the world because India and China are the top countries to which this kind of American funding is going to. Now, when we talk about Malaysia, for example, Intel is being led by Libu Tan, who grew up in Muar, of course. Broadcom is led by Hock Tan. So two on the infra layer is already dominating. Two titans are led by Malaysians. I've learned yesterday that NVIDIA's robotics lab is also run by a Malaysian. So the deeper you go down the talent stack, you'll see that Southeast Asia, Asia has incredible teeth and legs and arms into the heart of what AI is. And it's being funded by Americans. So to which we can leverage that to build something that's not as geographically limited. That's where we expand opportunities. That's where we expand the ideas of what we can fund, what we can build together. So I would say we're already in the lead. What do you all think? That's right, let's go.
Syed, Haizam, would love to hear your perspective.
No, I mean, this is quite close to me because I spent the last 9 months at the Blavatnik and I wrote a paper on how Malaysia, I guess ASEAN, can use this as the AI revolution as a catalyst to become a global champion in this space. I mean, if you look at ASEAN as a whole, I mean, that's why we're here. The market is huge. The market is up there. And you know, yes, you have the US and you have the China with regards to deep tech, but we have a lot of things going on for us here, especially with the infrastructure that's being built. I mean, I'm looking at Malaysia, all the different data centers, the talent pool, et cetera, et cetera. So in my paper, I basically make a point that we should use this AI revolution as our catalyst. So in the 60s and 70s, you had Korea and Japan using the electronics and the automotive. The 80s, Taiwan semiconductor. 90s, India with regards to the internet bubble. Malaysia, Southeast Asia can use this AI revolution as that, because everything is in place. We have the infrastructure. There is a reason why Google and NVIDIA are building the data centers here. But we shouldn't be just a pass-through. We should go a bit deeper tech, build up our talent pool, etc. And it's very important that ASEAN as a whole, because as I mentioned, Malaysia as one, Singapore as one, Thailand, Philippines, Vietnam, etc. They can't compete, but together they potentially could. So with regards to policy making, it needs to be integrated. As I mentioned, we built Global AI Village here. Hopefully ASEAN members from all around the ASEAN countries can come here and work more easily, working on projects in the US, for example. So the Hive Global AI Fund, we're working on companies that are based out of Silicon Valley, but it could potentially be AI engineers, a Cambodian AI engineer in Kuala Lumpur, working on that. And the economics make sense. Good value for the US companies and good value for the AI engineers, right?
Pedro, you want to share your perspective?
So I'm going to try to be a little bit more practical and perhaps try not to be complacent and try to push forward, right? So yes, it is true that in the US companies in AI, most people working there are Asian. When you see the photo when Grok was launched and they made a photo of the initial team, they were all Asians. And Elon Musk, but most of them were Asians. But those things are not happening here in Southeast Asia. They're happening in China or they are happening in the US. So the big question is, how do you do it here? Because yes, it's fine that they are Asians, but they are somewhere else, right? How do you do it here? And I think one big handicap that Malaysia has is talent. And in order to get talent up to speed, there are two ways of doing it. Either you take your local talent and you train them, or the other way is you let people who have the skills to come in, right? These are the only two possible ways, right? And I think it's worth thinking about that. Could we become a hub for AI in Southeast Asia by training better our people and also by bringing some experts, maybe people that have certain qualifications, that have worked on startups, somebody who wants to create an AI startup, can we invite them to come to Malaysia? Thailand, Thailand is very innovative. Thailand, a few years ago, launched a new immigration program that allowed people with specific skills to go to Thailand at a preferable tax rate so that they could work in specific companies in technology roles. And this is a program that is going relatively well. I believe that it will be possible to create a hub for AI in Malaysia, but we need to address the talent issues. Think about it. We are one of the very few countries in Southeast Asia that can communicate with everybody, right? We speak English. You try to speak with a Thai person, you don't really understand. There are language problems. Here in Malaysia, we could take a leadership position on AI, but that requires pushing very much on training our people and perhaps letting some experts come in and establish themselves in Malaysia.
I'm glad you invited the idea of like some kind of like a practical lens, especially as to what we can do to truly be ahead and be in the lead in a lot of this. Because on one hand, talent participation, like we mentioned, there's a lot of legs abound, but ownership is very different. Like you can be a adopter of AI as a nation, you can be a user, you can be a builder of AI, but can you be an owner of these AI platforms? So if you think about like the AI platforms that the world is using right now, the most valuable ones, how many % ownership is actually US ownership in terms of the cap table, the equity, the control? How many % of that is actually owned by Malaysians, Malaysian sovereign wealth funds, Malaysian pension funds, Malaysian taxpayer money, Ministry of Finance, individuals, local Malaysian tycoons, for example, or it can't be Malaysia, it could be Bruneian, it could be Cambodian, it could be any of the ASEAN countries, right? So when you think about the ownership layer, that is always the critical piece that's missing in most of the policy roadmaps. We'll talk about adoption, about building more on entrepreneurs, but if you have other people own it, you know, and how many unicorns have Malaysia has built that other people own, right? So we don't want that to happen again and again and again, right? So I'll bring up that the missing gap to really bridge this is actually a capital strategy, an intentional capital strategy that will result in net ownership of the top AI platforms today and tomorrow.
Again, I have a very different views on capital strategy, but let me put the question a bit on ASEAN itself. We talk about ASEAN, but is it really different countries or ASEAN as one market? There are significant challenges for a company to actually scale up its presence across the Southeast Asia, whether we talk about language, whether we talk about regulations. What is, in your view, the critical enablers required to really accelerate a startups or a company to provide solutions across the Southeast Asia, or like including talent?
Don't mind I overstep and attack this question first, yeah? Pardon me. Bit of a mic hog at the karaoke room. Okay, I think thinking about Asia and thinking about ASEAN, these geographical associations help you in a world where trade routes are determined by geography, they're tangible goods. These ideas of trade unions, a lot of it is built because ships had to carry goods. But in a world of intangibles, these routes can be rewritten. And so the countries who are rewriting intangible trade routes are going to extend to way more power in the New World Order. People think the New World Order is about, oh, what's China doing, what US doing? Yeah, that's fine. But what's the rest of us doing? How are the countries like Southeast Asia, countries in Southeast Asia, rewriting this route? So I'll give you a real example. Today, one of the top builders, like I mentioned earlier, can be from Croatia and Ukraine, move to Georgia from program, make a lot of money and be profitable and move themselves to Dubai. We've got entrepreneurs that we back from one country, go to Singapore, and after that, then they end up in Dubai again because they can't get into the US. Some, they go into the US, but then they have to hire more people from a different country. They try to get more people into this other country instead. So Grab, for example, which was back in the early days, they had people in India, they had people in San Francisco, they had people in Singapore, they had people in Malaysia. So as far as like building hubs, the idea of hubs and a hub, we gotta ditch these kind of like old ideas of like physicality and instead suspend ourselves into the idea that we can build networks of people who trust, high trust networks. So what 500 we're working on now is that we call it AI residencies. Part of our larger plan, we call the AI takeover. So we've built an AI residency right here in Malaysia where AI builders come to office for free to kind of build. And we're helping them get into Silicon Valley. We're rolling out AI Takeover Silicon Valley. We've got AI Takeover Mexico. We're going to spin up AI Takeover in one of the countries in the Middle East by the end of the year. When we do these things, talents then can go as though you're going to talent embassies, as though you've got an AI passport to go to these embassies. Anyone like John Wick? The movie John Wick? Anyone watch John Wick? I love John Wick. So the assassins is John Wick. They go to the Continental, right? Where the assassins meet up in this hotel that they can check in. That's kind of what this program's designed and modeled after in some way. Right? So again, I want to suspend the idea of like these different trade blocks, right? We have to go beyond it. We are living in a world of intangibles. Let's just wake up to that and own that.
Yeah, no, so as I mentioned before, I'm a firm believer that private sector needs to drive this because they're willing to take the risk and they have a commercial drive. So actually, something that Khailee is also involved with is this ASEAN Private Markets Council that's being led, it is a brainchild of the chairman of the ASEAN BUC, to get all the different private sector, like venture capital funds, private sector money from all over Southeast Asia into one council. So it's being led by Ikhlas Capital, Khailee 500 Global, Credo, us at the Hive as well. And basically, one large voice across all the different regions, all the different countries within ASEAN, to make sure that there's alignment in terms of policies, et cetera, et cetera. I just, in the speaker's lounge just now, I was just speaking to someone who's a startup based out in Vietnam, and he was mentioning, Vietnam's really good. I got really good tech talent, but the front office side is lacking. And then on the Malaysian side, you just mentioned that the tech talent is not there. You know, why can't they work together in one market, right? And then solve the issue, right? And also because of the geopolitical risk in the two big superpowers, Southeast Asia, ASEAN can play a really pivotal role and really take advantage of that.
Pedro, you want to share? Again, it's quite interesting, right? Again, lots of things happening. I really like the idea about high net worth. But the question is, again, what will it really take to capture the opportunities or develop the solutions for the local market? Are the startups funded enough which can create solutions only for Malaysia? Or they have to think about a wider geographies? Because the requirements of our customers in Malaysia might be very different. Like example, you're mentioning healthcare. Healthcare requirements in Malaysia can often be very different for other countries. So in this kind of an environment, how do you think of startups to think about personalizations versus having a broader appeal as well?
Well, I think it depends on whether your startup is B2B, B2C, right? I mean, if you are B2B, you can be more localized. Because I think in B2B, the physicality matters. You are selling to physical people. And the strategy for an AI startup that is B2B, it will be more likely that you launch a service for a certain group of companies in one place, in one country, and then you launch another service, and you launch another service, and you are selling more things to the same clients. Now, if you are B2C, that's different, because in B2C is where the networks of scale matter, and that's where you have to find a standardized way to deliver your product or service, right? To as many people as possible. That's where it becomes more complicated. One example of a startup that was trying to become global from Malaysia and finally didn't work because it faced these kind of issues, the issues of I cannot reach, I don't have a product that reaches all the countries. It was iFlix. Right? If you remember iFlix, they started here with the idea that they could become the Netflix of emerging countries, but the problem came when they realized that the content in each country is completely different. They tried to grow from Malaysia into Southeast Asia, then South Asia, the Middle East, even Africa, and that didn't scale up, right? The good thing that AI is bringing is that with AI you could personalize it better in a more automatic way, but the difficulty of scaling up in a country that is more heterogeneous, or in a region that is more heterogeneous than like Southeast Asia in comparison to the US, because the US is relatively monolithic, right? That's the challenge that you have here.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm really excited about this new fund that we're launching, the Hive Global AI Fund, is we're bridging the Silicon Valley, US, and building that corridor between Southeast Asia and Malaysia. So you've got that deep tech side. So over the last 3 years running the Hive Southeast Asia, I've noticed that we have a problem with regards to companies getting out of the Series A, Series B, Series C side in terms of growth. Khailee will testify this, that there's like a black hole of sorts with regards to Malaysian companies. But then when you look at ASEAN as a whole, they say that Malaysian market is a bit too small, but the ASEAN market is not that. So having summits like this, I saw Minister Gobin downstairs just entering into the ministerial roundtable to discuss how policy can be more aligned, etc. I mean, it's a good start. Yeah. All the different startups and the different companies should have access to all of Southeast Asia, and as you mentioned, the policies should be more aligned and streamlined. But that stems with the discussion, sorry. I'm
a little conflicted with this, like if you're talking about encouraging, let's say, a local AI builder to build solutions for Malaysians, for example, or maybe let's say Cambodian to build for Cambodia, I think that will naturally happen. There'll always be builders who are building locally, comfortably, within their range, within something that they have. But for me, is that like the power of an outlier is so great that it can uplift an entire nation.
Agree.
And to create an outlier, serving your own country alone is not going to produce an outlier. It's, to give you a metaphor, it's kind of like, will you open a local coffee chain or you want to become Starbucks, right? And let's say you use an old economy frame of mind. So as a venture capital firm, when we cut our first check in Canva, it's not a US company, it's an Australian company, right? So Melody Perkins and Cliff, they built a super global company, making like billions in revenue. So it's a $40 billion company, and the list is probably going to be 80 billion and whatnot. Now we are making 3,000x on that check. Now our biggest local regional champions, we're making 100x. You know, on our grabs, our customs, all that, it's about in the hundreds. It's not even in the thousands. So for a VC, we make so much more money when you've got a hyper-global firm. Now, when it comes to AI, so much of it is it's inherently global that a Malaysian firm, they're actually looking at a Chinese solution. They're looking at a US solution. They're looking at an Indian solution. And they're looking at a Malaysian solution. And all of them have to go through the RFP. So I would say that because of its global competitiveness, we are reorganizing everything we have at the firm to support the outlier. In this room, one of you is going to build a super outlier that's completely global. So we're reorchestrating our entire firm to be able to serve you. We just need one of you in this room. And that one of you is going to come back to this country and become a scion and buy up everything.
No, again, I'm cautious of time. Thanks, Khailee, Syed, Haizam, and Pedro for your time. Again, key learnings, right? Again, we are living in a world where this is one of the biggest disruptions of our lifetime. The scale of opportunities is really, again, I don't think so that we can compare with anything for the size of opportunity. I really like the idea, right? We need AI, like hyper network. And from the beginning, each of the startups should think about how they can be really outlier. And to really capture this opportunity, I think all the stakeholders, private players, government, public sectors, and all needs to really come together. But really, thanks a lot, everyone, for your time. Thank you.